Try that again now that I'm not muted. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's 7 o'clock, and we're going to begin here this evening. I appreciate everybody coming in, and special thanks to everybody at the NJDEP for offering to host this webinar. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. Welcome especially to Mayor Callie from West Amwell. Just a couple of housekeeping notes about the meeting this evening. It is being recorded and will be posted to the Lambertville City website probably as early as tomorrow as a resource for the community. The meeting format is a webinar, so the only people you'll see this evening are the panelists who are on your screen. Everyone else will just be watching this evening. The NJDEP folks will be addressing questions that have been submitted to the city clerk and the clerk of West Amwell Township. Just a couple of other things. No one will be monitoring the chat. If at the end of this session you have additional questions, they can be directed to myself or Mayor Callie or our respective clerks, and NJDEP will follow up with answers. So I think that's all I have to say to start. I'm going to kick this over to Alexander Skinner from the DEP with my thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for having us tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity that you give us a platform that we can share some information about PFAS. So I am going to share my screen and pull up our presentation that we have prepared. Let's go into full screen mode. Okay. Thumbs up if you guys can all see that.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. We are here with Lambertville and West Amwell to have a public meeting where we are going to go over what are PFAS. PFAS in specifically Lambertville and West Amwell, the background there. We will go through ongoing potable well investigations in the area. We will discuss remedial alternatives analysis. We will discuss spill fund damage claims, and then we will answer questions that have been submitted by Lambertville and West Amwell residents. So from the immediate concern unit, which is my group, we have my bureau chief, Bill Hanrahan, on the panel. Myself, I am a supervisor in the immediate concern unit. Then from the fund management section, we have Bill Schreier, who is a section chief. If you want to give a wave, Bill. We also have Frank DeFeo with us, who is working with Bill. And then we have from the Office of Community Relations, Greg Broslowski. Greg, if you want to give a wave. Okay, so let's get into it. What are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, otherwise known as PFAS? So PFAS might seem new, but PFAS has been evaluated by the NJDEP, specifically the Division of Science and Research, and other programs within NJDEP for over 15 years. New Jersey is recognized as a national leader on this topic. PFAS are really a large group of man-made chemicals. They repel water. They are resistant to heat and chemical reaction. And it's because of those properties that they are actually quite helpful in society, and they have a wide variety of industrial and chemical uses. However, a common characteristic of concern with PFAS is that many break down very slowly in the environment. And they can also build up, unfortunately, in people, animals, as well as the environment over time. PFAS can be found in surface water, groundwater, soil, and air. And this can happen in remote locations like Lambertville and West Amwell, and also in densely populated urban centers worldwide. There are thousands of PFAS chemicals in this family, and they're found in many different consumer products, commercial products, and industrial products, including materials that are actually found in our own homes and workplaces. So going into a bit more detail where PFAS can be found, I'm sure as many of you know, PFAS can be found in drinking water, public drinking water systems, private drinking water wells. PFAS can be found in soil and water at or near waste sites. So you have landfills, disposal sites, hazardous waste sites, such as those that would fall under Federal Superfund and Resource Conservation and Recovery Act programs. We also have PFAS found in fire extinguishing foam. That's another popular one that people have heard of. Aqueous film forming foams, AFFF. That's used to extinguish flammable liquid-based fires. So those foams are used in training, emergency response events at airports, shipyards, military bases, firefighting training facilities, chemical plants, and refineries. PFAS can also be found in manufacturing or chemical production facilities. That would be through the use or the production of PFAS. So those facilities would include chrome plating, electronics, but also certain textile and then paper manufacturers as well. PFAS can even be found in food. PFAS can be found in fish caught from water contaminated by PFAS, in dairy products from livestock exposed to PFAS. It can also be found in food packaging. So grease-resistant paper, fast food containers, microwave popcorn bags. Additionally, household products and dust. We also have it in personal care products, shampoo, dental floss, and also in biosolids. So that would be fertilizers from wastewater treatment plants that might be used on agricultural lands. So PFAS can be found in many places. And here is a little graphic that you can look at. This PowerPoint will be provided to the town afterwards. So this will be available to you to look at. This is kind of a simplified PFAS cycle shown. So you could kind of see where PFAS might initiate, where it goes to. So anywhere from PFAS production being used in industries at the upper left to being used in our household products, and then how it would get into groundwater. So let's get a little more specific about PFAS, specifically in New Jersey. So in 2018, NJDEP established a maximum contaminant level. And what that did was it required certain public water supply systems to sample regularly for PFAS to see if it was there. In 2020, the NJDEP established groundwater quality standards for 3 PFAS compounds. And that allowed us to start investigating private potable wells. Then in 2021, PFAS was added to the Private Well Testing Act. And what that means is upon the sale of a property, when you're going to sell your house, you have to sample for PFAS. It's required. And then in 2024, most recently, the US EPA established federal PFAS MCLs. So nationally, we have PFOS, PFOA, PFNA, PFHXS, Gen X, and PFBS that are regulated. And that is because it was determined that those 6 PFAS compounds occur in groundwater and drinking water at levels of concern. So PFAS standards are also shown in the table to the right. And here is another graphic. This map is actually pretty cool. This is available online. Anybody can look at it. It is an ArcGIS compatible map. We also have a link to it down here. So once again, this PowerPoint will be provided and you can look at it if you feel so inclined. This is showing Private Well Testing Act results. So again, when you're going to sell your house, you have to sample your well water. That data comes to the DEP and we can use that data to put it into a map. And what you are seeing is PFAS percentage-wise in wells and how concentrated it is. So the darker colors would be a higher area of concentration. And if you look down, we would have Lambertville and West Amwell down around here. Okay, so now NJDEP involvement. The Immediate Concern Unit, which is the group that I work in, is conducting a potable well investigation, as well as a source investigation in Lambertville and West Amwell. This involves sampling potable wells to identify those that might be affected by PFAS, as well as examining potential sources of the contamination. All owners of properties with exceedances have or will be informed to file a spill fund damage claim, which we will hear about in just a little bit, to determine if you're eligible for assistance. And now let's go through ICU's involvement specifically in this case. So on September 23rd, 2024, quite recently, the attorney for West Amwell informed NJDEP of multiple wells that were contaminated with PFAS in the Belvedere Ave and Allen Street area. The results were reviewed by the department, as well as reviewed with nearby Private Well Testing Act data, and it was determined that a potable well investigation should be initiated to determine the extent of PFAS contamination. The investigation is ongoing. Additional potable well sampling is scheduled for December 17th, 2024. And this is just a map of the area showing properties that were already sampled and are above standard and where we are looking to sample next. So now discussing currently known extent and the remedial alternatives analysis. So once we conduct sampling and using all available potable well results, the DEP develops what's called a currently known extent of groundwater contamination. And once that CKE is finalized, the ICU actually analyzes viable long-term remedial actions that would provide clean drinking water to those within the CKE. So long-term remedial measures, that could be point of entry treatment systems, which we'll get more into shortly, or it could include extension and connection of properties to a public water system, so a water line. Based on the analysis, the NJDEP then provides a recommendation to the municipalities for the most protective and cost-effective remedial action that would protect all contaminated wells in the CKE. Property owners outside of that established CKE that were not included in a potable well sampling event, they can still conduct their own sampling. And if contamination is identified, those property owners may be eligible to file a spill fund claim with the Environmental Claims Administration. And now I will hand it over to Bill Schreier.
Good evening. My name is Bill Schreier, as Lexi has just said. I am the section chief of the fund management section, and I have the privilege of managing the damage claims to the Spill Compensation Fund program. So the Spill Fund was created with the New Jersey Spill Compensation and Control Act, which was enacted in 1977. And like I said, it created the Spill Compensation Fund. The Spill Fund is administered by the Environmental Claims Administration within the Contaminated Site Remediation and Redevelopment Program of the NJDEP. It is implemented through the processing of damage claims pursuant to the Spill Compensation and Control Act. Revenues for the fund are provided by taxes that are levied on transfer of petroleum and other hazardous substances from major facilities. This is a non-lapsing revolving fund made available to the residents, municipalities, and businesses in New Jersey through damage claims filed with the NJDEP. The Spill Fund is a fund of last resort. You must exhaust all other sources of funding, including potential responsible party or parties. For assistance, one must first incur damages. Speculative damages are not eligible. You are ineligible if the claimant knew or should have known about the discharge. And if you're a responsible party, you are also ineligible. Claims are referred to us from Private Well Testing Act sampling data, referrals from other NJDEP programs, calls to the NJDEP hotline, and routine homeowner sampling that is performed by certified laboratory results. This is when they collect either 1 or 2 samples. The NJDEP is aware that the cost to sample private wells for PFAS are expensive. To address this issue, the NJDEP is allowing for the collection of 1 PFAS untreated sample result under the following conditions. The private well owner and laboratory must submit the full laboratory data deliverables in electronic format with the Spill Fund claim form. This method of confirmation sampling will result in longer Spill Fund damage claim processing time, as the results need to be reviewed by the CSRR's Office of Data Quality. However, the private well owner will be reimbursed in full for the cost of this sample. Alternatively, the private well owner can request that the laboratory collect an initial and confirmation PFAS sample. This method of confirmation sampling does not require the submission of the full laboratory deliverables, result in faster claim processing. However, the private well owner will only be reimbursed for the cost of the confirmation sample. The administrator shall prioritize the categories of claims that are eligible for compensation in the following order. homeowner claims for potable water damages and restoration, schools and childcare facilities for potable water damages and restoration at schools and childcare facilities, and all other categories of claims. Claims to the spill fund need to be submitted within 1 year of the date of discovery of the damage. All appropriate forms and required data need to be completed and sent to the ECA for review and processing. The ECA will review the submittals for completeness and eligibility, and claimants are notified by the ECA spill fund of claim validity and eligibility. It is recommended that claims be submitted to the department via certified mail or by other means that provide receipt showing date of mailing and date of delivery. Claims cannot be submitted electronically. You must provide copies of water test results from NJ State Certified Water Testing Laboratory. This is either the initial and confirmation sample or just an initial sample with full data deliverables. You must include a copy of a current tax bill or deed to prove your property ownership. If there is no water line available, you will provide 3 estimates to install, maintain, and monitor a point of entry treatment system, or POET. If a water line is available, you'll provide 3 estimates from a licensed plumber to connect you to public water and 3 estimates from certified well sealers to seal the well. A POET. What you're seeing here is a picture of a POET. It's a 2-tank system. It's a lead lag tank. In the POET, in the 2 tanks that are there, there is granular activated carbon. That's the media that's used to filter out the contaminants that are in your water. The other objects that are in there are 2 sediment filters that will help filter out any sediment that's coming from the well water. And then there are sampling ports within the POET system. There's one at the beginning, which we call as the raw untreated sample port. There's a treated sampling port, which is between the tanks. And then there's a finished water sampling after it's gone through the entire system. The POET provides a whole house treatment, and the spill fund will pay for the maintenance and sampling of the POET system while you own the property. Once you sell the property, the maintenance eligibility ends and cannot be transferred to the new property owner. Well sealing is required if the home is connected to public water. For more information on spill fund, you can visit our website, or you can contact us at the phone number that's listed on the slide, or email us for a quicker response. And for additional resources for residents, you can visit our other websites that are on the department's website that specify for PFAS, for immediate environmental concern guidance, Private Well Testing Act information. It will also provide you with a list of labs that are Private Well Testing Act certified. And that will conclude my portion of the presentation, and we'll move on to the questions. Go ahead, Lexi.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And once again, this presentation will be provided. X out of that. And let's go into full view of the questions. And I will zoom in. How's that look? Look good?
Good.
Okay, so now we will answer resident submitted questions from Lambertville as well as West Amwell. So these first set of questions were answered by the Bureau of Environmental Measurements and Site Assessment Immediate Concern Unit. So that's my group, the group that is doing the investigation into private potable wells, the group that's doing the sampling in your neighborhood. So the first question asks, what is being done to investigate and determine the source of the contamination? How will the source of the PFAS contamination be located? Well, there is an unknown source investigation initiated for the Lambertville West Amwell site. It is called Belvedere Avenue and Allen Street groundwater contamination, as those were the first samples that we were alerted to with concentrations above for PFAS. The unknown source investigation includes an area-wide search for potential sources of PFAS contamination. Soil and groundwater investigations would be completed at any area that is determined to be a potential source of the potable well contamination. In general, though, PFAS contamination has been identified nationwide. As we discussed during the PowerPoint, there are many common sources of PFAS, air and wastewater emissions that might come from industrial facilities, AFFF foam used during fire training drills, as well as used to put out fires, sludge and effluent from wastewater treatment plants. We have landfills where PFAS containing industrial waste or even just consumer products might be disposed. And then we even have residential septic systems. As you know, PFAS contamination is widespread throughout the nation. But where sources of PFAS contamination are identified in New Jersey, they are actually required to be cleaned up. So if we find a source, it's required that it gets cleaned up. For private well contamination with PFAS, it is NJDEP's first priority to install the POET systems. That way we're providing clean drinking water to residents. So source investigation, yes, but our first priority is making sure that residents are not drinking contaminated water. And once again, we have this graphic simplified PFAS cycle. So 2 places that you can take a look at it. Okay, question 2 asks, who is responsible for the cleanup? Once again, until a source can be identified, our main priority is to determine the extent of contaminated potable wells. Provide those people with clean drinking water, make sure they know how to do that through the spill fund program. But once a source is determined, will the responsible party be held accountable for costs associated with sampling and cleanup? So NJDEP will conduct an investigation to identify possible responsible parties. That is the unknown source investigation. And if sources of PFAS contamination are found, those parties would be notified of their responsibility to remediate the contamination. So yes, it would be the responsibility of the source. If a source of contamination is discovered, the property owner would be required to hire what is called a licensed site remediation professional, otherwise known as an LSRP. This is a professional who oversees the entire remediation of the contaminated site. And they work with the department submitting reports so that everyone's kept on the same page. Question 4 asks, once the source of contamination has been located, what's the plan to remove PFAS from the environment? There are various methods that might be determined to be the best to remove PFAS from the environment. The responsible party, once identified, they are subject to technical requirements for site remediation. And that is actually a link that you could click on if you feel so inclined. It goes through all the rules and regulations for cleanup. So pursuant to this, contamination has to be fully delineated, all receptors have to be identified, and remedial measures must be implemented. And that link goes into probably more detail than you would want to read about remediation techniques, but it is there. Question 5, what could go wrong during the cleanup process? Also, what risks should residents be aware of? Well, the cleanup process would occur in phases. So the initial phase is including sampling of private wells in the area where PFAS contamination has been identified. So really hitting home, sampling private potable wells of residents, making sure if those people are eligible, a POET system is installed using state funds. The purpose of this first phase is to reduce the risk of residents drinking PFAS contaminated water. The next phase, or the phase that is also being initiated, is the unknown source investigation. It's too soon really in the cleanup process to speculate on potential risks of any cleanup, but the purpose of the cleanup would be to reduce the risk of exposure to any PFAS contamination that would be identified. Question 6, at what point does NJDEP get involved with potable well contamination? So once a cluster of contaminated potable wells are identified, like in your case, how the attorney brought to the DEP the cluster of wells, that gets reviewed, and it is determined whether a potable well investigation should be initiated. So in this case, it was determined that yes, a potable well investigation was necessary. And more specifically, somebody asks when, date, and how was the NJDEP informed of the contaminated potable wells in Lambertville and West Amwell? So we touched on this a bit in the PowerPoint presentation. It was just a few months ago, September 23rd, that the DEP received a letter from the attorney for West Amwell. And this was regarding the identification of PFAS in 7 potable wells in a residential neighborhood. So the area of Belvedere and Allen. And it was based on those results of the 7 potable wells that the ICU evaluated. Additionally, the ICU looked at Private Well Testing Act data and determined that a potable well receptor evaluation was necessary. And that's when we began planning additional sampling. Question 8, what has NJDEP done so far? What are next steps? A potable well receptor investigation has been initiated. So all owners of potable wells within an established radius of the point of investigation, so that would be Belvedere, Allen, are contacted to obtain access to conduct sampling of their potable wells. But once that's completed, if additional impacted potable wells are identified through that sampling process, we again would conduct the same process. So we would step out an additional distance from the newly identified contaminated potable wells to determine the full extent. This continues until we've determined how far the contamination goes. And then based on the data that is obtained by that sampling, we would stop once we hit non-detect concentrations or once we find concentrations that are below standard for PFAS. It is important to note, though, that while the NJDEP will be performing private well sampling in the area, the quickest way for an owner to determine if their well is contaminated would be for the individual to sample their own private well using an approved laboratory, and then filing a spill fund claim to have the POET installed. And this is also a link that you can click on that'll bring you right to the list of PFAS certified laboratories. And then also going back to what has NJDEP done so far, what are next steps? The unknown source investigation has been initiated. A records search will be conducted, and that is to determine if any potential sources of PFAS are in the area. So if potential sources are identified, soil, groundwater sampling, that gets conducted. And that helps to determine if a discharge of PFAS has occurred. And then where discharges of PFAS are identified, so that soil, that groundwater sampling, if it does identify PFAS at one of those suspected sources, the property owner would then be notified. Would then be required to remediate. So if the property owner is unable to conduct the remediation for any reason, the property may then be remediated using state funds. So that's kind of the process. And now I'll hand it back over to Bill Schreier for spill fund questions.
So question number 9 goes over, if you have to get filtering system, is this covered under the spill fund and what is the process? Once PFAS contamination has been confirmed to be in your private well, the owner has 1 year to file a spill fund damage claim. The property owner will be required to complete and submit the spill fund damage claim form and submit the initial sampling results, if applicable, confirmation result, and proof of property ownership and 3 competitive bids to install, maintain, and monitor a granular activated POET. Once a spill fund claim is received, the Environmental Claims Administration reviews the claim to determine the eligibility. If a claim is found eligible, the ECA issues an offer to pay notification that outlines what costs are eligible for compensation from the spill fund. For claims that are submitted to address well drinking water with PFAS contamination, the following would be covered once your claim is found eligible. Costs of the initial sample, providing full data lab data deliverables are submitted. Cost of a confirmation sample. Installation. You must keep your receipts for the cost for the installation of the GAC POET system. The POET installation sampling to ensure what water is safe to drink. So after the POET is installed, a lab comes out and tests your system at the finished water end to make sure that everything is working correctly. Annual raw untreated before GAC treatment system water sampling that's analyzed for PFAS. Semi-annual treated water samples. Those are the samples that are collected between the 2 tanks to analyze for PFAS, and general maintenance as needed. Why do I have to get 3 different tests once you test above standard for PFAS? 3 tests are not required. As stated in the presentation, the ECA requires the laboratory testing confirmation when private well testing is performed. A property owner can obtain laboratory confirmation in 2 ways. If only one sample is collected, the private well owner and laboratory must submit the full laboratory data deliverables in electronic format with the spill fund claim form. This method of confirmation sampling will result in longer spill fund damage claim processing time, as the results need to be reviewed by our Office of Data Quality. However, the well owner will be reimbursed in full for the cost of this sample. Alternatively, the private well owner can request that the laboratory collect an initial and confirmation PFAS sample. This method of confirmation sampling does not require the submission of full laboratory deliverables and result in faster claim processing. However, the private well owner will only be reimbursed for the cost of the confirmation sample. Will the NJDP provide clean water to residents? If so, and when? Once a private well has confirmed PFAS contamination, the property owner may file a spill fund damage claim, obtain 3 competitive bids to install, maintain, and monitor a GAC POET. The installation of POET is the easiest and quickest remedy to address the PFAS contamination in private wells. Once BEMSA has determined the extent of contamination, a remedial alternatives analysis will be conducted to determine the best long-term solution to the problem. How is PFAS removed from the drinking water? The NJDP requires a POET that is installed directly before water enters the house plumbing, typically after it exits a pressure tank. This system consists of a pre-treatment filter to remove solid particles and 2 tanks containing granular activated carbon, which remove regulated PFAS chemicals from the water. Raw or untreated water enters the pre-treatment sediment filter, which removes small solid particles and protects the POET system. The water then enters the first tank, where it encounters granular activated carbon, which is a media that removes PFAS from water. The PFAS contaminants stick to the GAC, and the cleaned water proceeds through to tank 2. Tank 2 is a backup tank. It is also filled with GAC. From there, the clean water can be circulated through the entire house. Question 13. Several folks are just below the NJDP standard for PFAS contamination, the groundwater quality standard, but are above the US EPA standard, the maximum contaminant level. Would these people qualify for NJ Spill Fund to help with remediation? Residents whose wells are sampled and show PFAS contamination above the US EPA MCL, but below the NJDP groundwater quality standard, are eligible to apply to the Spill Fund.
Okay, and I'm going to take it back over and answer some miscellaneous questions that didn't quite fit into the BEMSA immediate concern unit section, and they didn't quite fit into the spill fund section. So question 14, what are the health effects? And what if you experience health issues related to high levels of exposure? What specific health issues or concerns should our doctors be monitoring, since we've been drinking, cooking, bathing in PFAS contaminated water for 20 years? So anything health related, that is Department of Health. They can help answer questions, and the Department of Health can also help facilitate discussions with your healthcare professionals. So I would urge you to contact Department of Health if you do have any questions of that nature. And then we also have resources at the end of this document, more that you can read about for health-based information and concerns. Question 15. Has there been any discussion concerning the effect this contamination and subsequent filtration system, the POET, has or would have on property values? Will agreements and cost reimbursements transfer to new homeowners when the house is sold? So this is a challenging question. We can't really address the possible property values for a given home just because there are so many factors that might influence the sale of a home. So this kind of question is really beyond our ability to answer. But concerning the second part, will agreements and cost reimbursements transfer to new homeowners when the house is sold? Those agreements and cost reimbursements end when the house is sold. They do not transfer to the new homeowner, as that property owner purchased with full knowledge of the drinking water issue. Question 16. How do you help people who can't afford all the testing that's necessary? So going back to the investigation being performed by my group, if a resident is within that established radius of the point of investigation, so right now that would be the Belvedere, Allen area, they would be contacted to obtain access to conduct sampling of their potable well using DEP funds. So they'd be part of that investigation. It's important to note, though, while some owners may eventually be contacted by my group to have their well sampled as part of that investigation, there is no guarantee that the step-out sampling would reach someone's house or that they would be tested within a certain time frame. So the Environmental Claims Administration requires laboratory testing confirmation when private well testing is performed. If only one sample is collected, the private well owner and laboratory has to submit the full laboratory data deliverables in electronic format with the spill fund claim form. However, the private well owner would be reimbursed. Question 17, there's a language barrier as many residents don't speak English. How do we make sure Spanish-speaking population is protected and informed? DEP letters and documents are available in Spanish as well as English. DEP can accommodate non-English speaking well owners with questions, comments, concerns by having them contact staff who speak Spanish or other languages. So we can definitely accommodate that. Question 18, how can residents stay informed? So the ICU works closely with the Office of Community Relations, or OCR, and that is a resource for the community. Greg Broslowski, who is on tonight on the panel, we work extremely closely together. He is your resource in the community. He can be contacted by phone or email, and he's very knowledgeable about the investigation, about PFAS in general. He can answer questions, comments, concerns relating to the investigation. But additionally, we are committed to keeping the town, or both towns, I should say, up to date regarding the latest actions, whether that's sampling information or source investigation information. Question 19, will there be another meeting? Additional meetings can certainly be planned and held if the need arises. But for regular updates, I do urge you to contact OCR, Greg Broslowski, and his information is at the bottom. He is a wonderful resource. Question 20, where are the official boundaries of the old municipal landfill? And do you think it could be a potential source of contamination? So this isn't on this wasn't on any of our documents, but we did have a proposed plan that was sent to the DEP by the municipality that showed the boundaries of the former landfill appear to be around block 1073, lot 33, 33.01. And then going back to question 1 or the PowerPoint, landfills could be a source of PFAS. Question 21, will the land that they want to develop at the old high school location be tested for PFAS and any other contaminants? If contamination is found, how will it be remediated? So this goes to the unknown source investigation. Soil and groundwater may very well be tested at that property by DEP if it's found that PFAS chemicals were indeed used at the high school location, or if it in its former uses. Generally, if contamination is found, the responsible parties that are identified, once again, they're required to retain an LSRP, that's that licensed site remediation professional that oversees and completes the remediation. But if the responsible parties are unable or unwilling to complete the remediation, the site may then be remediated using state funds. Question 22, what recourse do renters have if their landlords are not installing a filtration system? How are they protected? So I'll be honest, I have not encountered this before, luckily, but as per NJAC, which is the New Jersey Administrative Code, which is basically a collection of rules and regulations that have been adopted by New Jersey. It states every dwelling unit and lodging house shall be provided with a safe supply of potable water meeting the standards as set forth in the New Jersey Safe Drinking Water Act regulations, which are published by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Also, in your back pocket, the spill fund will pay for a system if potable water is contaminated with PFAS above standard. And I would just urge you, if this is happening, reach out to us or the town, and we can start working on it. also if it's health related issues, the DOH can help facilitate discussions as well. Question 23, will there be a Spill Act directive issued? So a directive is a kind of enforcement action. So again, this goes back to if a source of contamination is discovered or when, the property owner would be required to retain that LSRP who oversees the remediation. But if enforcement actions are required, the directive would be issued at that time, and that would ensure that the remediation gets performed. Question 24, what about the bipartisan infrastructure law, National Drinking Water Standard to protect 100 million people from PFAS? It was passed April of 2024 by the Biden-Harris administration, $1 billion available in funding. So this law is for drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. Unfortunately, not for private well owners. So we don't have access to that money. But as we've gone over, the New Jersey Spill Compensation Fund, this will compensate eligible claimants for the cost of installing a POET system where there are impacted private wells. The Spill Fund, when determining the eligibility of a claim, would review the PFAS well sample results against the EPA's PFAS maximum contaminant level. So it uses that standard. And that takes us through the questions. We do have additional resources that are available for you. And again, this document would be provided to the town so it can be dispersed or put on the website so that everyone has access to it. And that is our presentation. I'll pass it back to Mayor Nowick and you can close it out. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this discussion. And you'll be seeing us. We'll be out there.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Very much appreciate it. Mayor Kelly, before we close, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to thank the members of DEP and Alexandra and Greg Berlasky and Bill for offering up their time to give the residents some firm commitments about what's going to happen so that they can be assured that things are moving forward. I appreciate everybody's time, and we look to get this thing resolved and make sure that everybody's safe and has safe drinking water. Thank you to you as well, Mayor Nowick.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. Well said, as always. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody who was on the call this evening. Just to remind people that if they have additional questions, they can be directed to myself, Mayor Kelly, or the clerks. Happy to forward those to the NJDEP for further clarification and answers. This presentation will be made available on the city's website as early as tomorrow. And again, thank you so much for being here this evening. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Hi, everyone.